What is going on, everyone? My name is Jazz, and thanks for entering the Lobby of Hobbies. On this episode, we're going to be reviewing the 1 to 4 player game, the 100 Torii, designed by Scott Caputo and published by Pencil First Games. We're also going to be asking the question, can you dig it? To figure out who the target audience is for this game, whether or not this game is inviting enough to get to the table, and simply, is the game good? But before we get started, let's first look at how this game is played. Alright, so here we have a 2-player setup of the 100 Torii. Now, when playing or setting up the game, players will first take the starting tile indicated by the 6 landmark icons on the front of it, as well as its red backing, and place it in the center of the table. Players will then shuffle up the draw deck of tiles and discard a set number of them dependent on the number of players in the game. For a 2-player game, we will discard 12 tiles from the stack, and then players will be dealt 2 starting tiles along with 2 coin tokens that players will be able to use in exchange for hiring the help of these various helpers in the garden. And we'll explain shortly how those helpers work. Off to the side, you'll see these various achievement tiles for the different helpers. There are 5 different helpers that players can hire or request the help from in the garden. You have the vendor up top, who when paying 1 token will allow you to discard a tile and draw 2 new tiles. The samurai, when paying 1 token, will allow you to place her meeple adjacent to a tile, blocking placement of a tile in that area. You also have the poet, who when paying 3 tokens, you can place him out onto the garden on top of a landmark, covering that landmark, and we'll explain how that can be beneficial. You also have the geisha. When paying 3 tokens, it will allow you to play 2 tiles on your turn, and you're scoring the second tile that you place. And then lastly, you have the gardener, who when paying 3 tokens allows you to place a tile on top of a previously placed garden tile without obviously making an illegal placement or without covering the original starting tile. So players will be able to have this off to the side and reference as they play. At the top here, you have different types of achievements. You have an enclosure achievement that players are trying to race to acquire. And then you have also these other achievement tokens, and I'll explain how players acquire these achievements. Off to the left, you have various tokens that players are going to be acquiring to be able to exchange and claim these various achievements that you see. You have stone tokens, fox statue tokens, lotus tokens, bridge tokens, lantern tokens, and water basin tokens. So, the turn structure works this way. At the beginning of a turn, a player can first choose to hire the help of one of these garden helpers. If they do, they would pay those set number of tokens, and they will use the benefit or the action of that helper. If it's the first time that the player is acquiring the help of a helper, they will take the matching tile for that helper and place this in front of them. Thus, at the end of the game, this would score me 2 points. Now, if I was to hire this same helper later in the game for a second time, I would flip this tile over and it would score me 4 points at the end of the game. If I was the first person to do it for a third time, I would take the 3-point tile, and at the end of the game, because I've used this helper 3 times, it scores me 7 points. Now, that would be the max I would be able to get from that specific one helper, but there in the game will be a number of these set for the amount of players in the game. So again, players will be able to choose to get help from one of the helpers and then move on to the next portion of their turn, which is the meat of the game, expanding the garden. So players will have to make a legal placement, which is placing a tile adjacent to a previously placed tile, and then they will look at the landmark icon on their placed tile and look for the shortest path to the next matching icon. So as you can see, we have a path here to the starting tile for this lotus icon. That will allow the player to take 1 lotus token. Then players will see if they've acquired any abilities to claim any of these achievements, and then they will end their turn by drawing another tile. The next player will go and they will choose whether or not they want to hire a helper, and if not, they will then place a tile out onto the board and look at the icon on their tile. As you can see, we have a lantern here, and they're going to make a path back to the starting tile, and in doing so, they will gain 1 for the lantern, but going through this red Torii gate, it will allow them to acquire another tile of the same type. So 1 lantern token going through the red gate will give them a 2nd lantern token, and they will place this in their player supply. They will check to see if they've had any achievements, and they will draw a new tile. The next player will continue, and they'll go in turn, and let's say they place this tile like this, and this tile has 2 different landmark icons. Players can choose which one they want to go. Let's say they decide to use this water basin, and in doing so, they're going to pass through 2 gates. They pass through a blue and a red gate. So for the red gate, first they're going to get 1 tile of that water basin. They'll gain a 2nd for going through a red gate, and they'll gain a 3rd token for going through the blue gate, but the blue gate has to be any other token that they did not already acquire. So let's say they've already gone for the lotus token. They're going to take another lotus token on this turn, and that will go into their player supply, and they'll end their turn checking for any achievements and drawing a new tile. The next player will go in their turn order, and let's say they place a token like this, or tile like this. So again, we're looking at this stone. There's no other stones in the path, and this player, for creating connection, will get a stone token. They will also gain a 2nd one for going through a red gate, and they will gain 2 other tokens of any type that they want that is not a stone token. So they've already acquired 2 of these lanterns. Let's say they take another 2 lanterns, and they will put that into their supply, check to see if they have acquired any achievements, and draw a new tile. Okay, so that brings us back to the first player, and let's say prior to placing a tile, this player wants to hire the help of the poet. They will pay 3 tokens plus an additional any of these other tokens they can use to pay. So they've paid 3 tokens, and they're going to place this poet and cover this stone tile. They will then place this tile here, and they're going to be scoring and acquiring tokens now. So they're going to decide to use this stone tile. Because this one has been covered, it's ignored, and players will create a path back to the next shortest stone, which would be back at the starting tile. This will allow them to gain 1 token of that stone, a 2nd for passing a red gate, and for going through 2 blue gates, they will have acquired 2, let's say they want to do lotuses because they're trying to collect lotuses. Players will then try to see how many achievement tiles they have to be able to claim achievements. And let's say once a player has 5 tokens of any one type, they can exchange these in and claim the 5-point achievement token of that type. The second time a player does that, they will just flip this token over, indicating that they've done it for a 2nd time, resulting in 10 points. Now, the first player to upgrade 3 tokens to 10 points each will get this tile here for 5 points at the end of the game. The second player, 3 points. And then you also have the opportunity, if players are able to get 1 of each of these in 5 points, they will be able to race and acquire the 5-point tile, which is acquiring 5 points worth of all 6 different achievement token types. You also have the opportunity to claim enclosure tiles. Now, enclosures, if you create an enclosure in the garden that encompasses 2 different or 2 icons or landmarks, that will allow you to acquire this token. If you do it again, you can, similarly to the helpers, you can upgrade it to a 4-point tile. And if you're the first person to do this 3 times, you'll acquire the 3-point tile. So players will continuously go through their turns, choosing to get help from the helpers, expanding their garden, claiming achievements, and then ending their turn by drawing tiles. Once all the tiles have been placed out and there's no more valid placements, players will then add up their score to determine who has scored the most points and has claimed the victory. All right, so now that you have a brief overview of how the game is played, let's start breaking this thing down and figure out, can you dig it? Let's look at the diversity factor of this game. I would definitely say that this game is geared primarily to your casual gamers, someone who has some experience with tile laying games. The gameplay is fairly streamlined, and there's some depth there when it comes to the scoring tiles and how you acquire those landmarks and how you get those different scoring achievements. I think this is probably a step above where a new gamer should start with respect to tile laying games. For new gamers, I would recommend something like Karuba or Carcassonne, or even something like Barren Park. Those would be my 3 suggestions prior to the 100 Torii. But I don't think it would take a lot of gameplays of those games for them to be able to step in and be ready to play something like this. But this one definitely, I think, is geared towards your casual gamer, someone who does have some experience with tile laying games. But I also think this game is a perfect sweet spot and filler for people who are experienced gamers, someone who wants something that has some depth with respect to the scoring mechanisms within a game. What I really liked about the game when it comes down to it for casual and experienced gamers was that slight complex element of trying to decide those helpers that you're going to use prior to your turn. So even prior to laying down a tile, are you going to use the helper that lets you draw 2 tiles, or the one that lets you play 2 tiles on a turn and score that second one? Or are you going to use the helper that allows you to block off a spot from your opponent being able to potentially place a tile in that spot, so that you can maybe place it on a subsequent turn later in the game? So I think those layers of strategy are perfectly fine for casual gamers, but definitely for the experienced gamer to keep them engaged in a game that is as streamlined as this. Now, with respect to the artwork and the theme, is this game inviting to get to the table? Man, the art on this game is beautifully done. The colors are vibrant. It definitely, I guess, sometimes looks like a beautiful oil painting when you look at this box, but the art is very well done. The conceptualization of how the art was done is something that really pops out when you look at it on the table. It's something that, as you walk by, you're looking at the tiles and you're able to see the vibrancy of how this beautiful piece of art is being laid out on this table. And that's exactly, to me, what it looked like as you were placing these tiles out. It was a wonderful piece of art. Even the tokens that were placed on, the scoring tokens that you're acquiring, they're very nicely done. The colors are vibrant, they stand out, they definitely make you enjoy the game as you're playing it. So I think it is inviting not only to new gamers, but even to casual and experienced gamers on the table presence of this game. Now, with respect to is the game good, for me, Scott Caputo has knocked it out of the park again. When it comes to his 2020 tile laying designs, Whistle Mountain, this and Sorcerer's City have all been winning games from the 2020 releases that he has had. And I am very, very intrigued to see what else Scott Caputo is going to be putting out with respect to tile laying games, because for me, when I think of tile laying games, I think of Scott Caputo now. But the 100 Torii is a game that I am looking to play more and more of. I'm looking to try the solo mode, which I have not had the opportunity to do so yet. But it's a game that I'm very much so interested in, introducing to my friends and family who are familiar with games like Carcassonne and who enjoy games like Carcassonne or Barren Park. So I would definitely say check out the 100 Torii, check out Pencil First Games, because they've been putting out some great designs as well. And definitely check out what Scott Caputo has been putting out. So if you enjoy this review, why don't you hit that subscribe button? If you haven't subscribed already, give us a thumbs up and hit that bell icon. That way you can be notified anytime we drop new content. But let me know what you think about this game. Have you tried it? Is this something that you've had your eye on? If so, drop a line down in the comments below. I'd love to chat with you, and I'll see you on the next episode of Can You Dig It?